Techniques for working with the traditional data. Hi, I am M. Asif Hussain from KnowHow Academy. What are we going to learn from this video? We are going to understand what is the data and traditional data. We are going to see what are this data pre-processing step that we have in this particular traditional data. We are going to see what is the different techniques that we have with the traditional data that we have to work it on. We are even going to see different approaches for working with the traditional data and with some examples. Now, when I'm talking something about the traditional data, so what is this traditional data exactly telling us all about? We all know that whenever we are working in any sector, okay, you take IT, you take electronics, you take manufacturing sector, you take pharmaceutical, okay, you take retail stores, okay, we take any sort of sector we go, we have to work with the data. So without data, we cannot do anything in this world. So even when we are waking from our bed till we go to the bed in the night, we are with the data only. We are with the data of our contacts, we are with the data of our work, we are with the data of our day-to-day activities, day-to-day life. So everywhere we are with the data. Now, when I'm talking something about the data, here that data that we have or that we are getting it from the client or customer in a company, that is purely a raw data, right? So traditional data is very similar to the raw data. So now the data that we are getting it is purely a raw data. That is the first thing that we have to understand. And the second thing that we have to understand is that this data that we are getting it, obviously it is a raw data, but it is giving us some information. What it is giving? It is giving us some information. It is giving us the information about the business. It is giving me the information about the client. It is giving me the information about the organization. So any data that we are getting it, though it might be 100% clean, though it is unclean data, though it is a raw data, so whatever it might be the data, but it is giving us what? It is giving us some information. So this is very clear. So for example, I am working on some particular project. I will get some data. So the data might be having some null values, the data might be missing, some columns might not be there, but still it is giving me some sort of information. Am I right? So this is giving me some sort of information. Now we need to understand one procedure. What is that procedure? The raw data that we are getting it from a client or customer, what we are doing, we are processing that particular data. So what are we doing with the process? We might process with the data cleaning part, we might process with the data transformation part, we might process it with the data integration part, we might process it with the data modeling part, we might process it with the requirements that we get from the client or customer. It might be anything. So what are we doing? The raw data we are getting it and we are processing it. After the processing, what is happening? We are getting some proper output or information that we have to meet the client's requirement. So now the important thing is that in between this raw data and the process that we are about to do, there is a small step that comes into the picture that is called as a data pre-processing. This is very important. So directly, see, let me give you a small example. If you are traveling by train, okay, if you are traveling by train, now when you have taken the tickets from the ticket counter, will you directly go and enter into the train? Will you directly go and enter into any bogie whichever you want? Getting the ticket is a raw data. Entering into the bogie is a process. So what's happening between these two? In between these two, first after you collect a ticket, okay, after you take a ticket, though you book online, though you take it offline, that doesn't matter. So what I'm telling it is that once you have a ticket with you, come to the railway station. After you go to the railway station, you check the chart where the names and the seat numbers are written. Okay, you check in which seat number my particular seat is allocated. You are going to check in which particular bogie number is my particular seat availability is there, and in which particular stop number it is going to stop at. So all these things, after you do the pre-processing, then you enter into that particular bogie and you search for your seat there and you sit in your seat. Am I right? So the same thing, let me give you an example related with the airways also. Okay, if you are traveling by plane somewhere, okay, if I am doing the booking online, if I want to go to Delhi, okay, so if I want to go to America, so I will book the tickets online. So once I have booked the ticket online, it doesn't mean that I can go and directly sit inside the plane, right? So it is not like that. So that is a direct process. No, in between that process to the ticket that you have booked, there are some steps that you have to follow. You have to do a check-in. You have to go inside the airport. You have to do the security check. You have to give your baggage. You have to pack it up. You have to go inside, take the boarding pass. Right, then you go and sit near the gate. Then the gate will be, when the plane arrives near the gate, then you have to go inside it. So there is a process that happens directly before going and sitting inside the plane. So in the same way, the raw data that we are getting it, and directly if we start working on it, no. Before that, there are some steps that you have to do. Data pre-processing. So what are those data pre-processing steps and how to handle with this traditional data? What are the different techniques we have that I am going to explain it to you. So before understanding the techniques, let us understand that the raw data that I am talking about, this raw data, it cannot be analyzed directly. It cannot be analyzed directly. For example, I am getting some sort of XYZ data with some few columns and few rows directly by looking at it. Okay, so this is exactly is the data and this is what is the analysis I have done. You cannot go and directly tell it to the client or the customer, right? It cannot be analyzed directly. So another important point is that this particular raw data, it is untouched. Okay, it is directly stored in SQL Server. For example, you take any e-commerce platform. If you are taking some products online, so you are purchasing it and that particular data of yours is getting stored in the server. Okay, it is untouched. It is directly stored in the server. Am I right? So if I talk about the next one, the data collection part. Okay, the data collection part. So when I'm talking about this data collection, so in this data collection, you might even get some wrong information, right? So for example, if there is a name called customer name and there instead of customer name, there is a country name, or if, for example, if the customer name Asif Hussain should be there, but there India is written. For example, if the price of the product should be there, but date of birth is written. Okay, in this, when we are getting the data collection part, okay, we are getting some wrong information. What are we going to get? We are going to get the wrong information. So now what we have to do, we have to handle this kind of traditional data with some techniques. What are those techniques? If I talk about the first technique is the class labeling. So what is meant by class labeling? You should be very much clear with what exactly the numerical data you have and what exactly the categorical data that we have. Okay, what is the numerical data that we have and what is the categorical data that I have? Okay, so this numerical data that I am talking about, it can be modified, it can be manipulated, right? But if the categorical data, if I consider, it cannot be manipulated. Am I right? This categorical data, it cannot be manipulated. Let me give you a small example. At the end of this slides, I'll show you one simple example. Alright, and the second technique that I am going to talk it to you is data cleaning part. We should clean the data. As I have given you the example, the customer name should be there, but country name is written. So price should be there, but year, date of birth is written. So we have to clean this data. We have to replace some values. You have to check the data types. We have to do the data cleaning part. Then the next step comes, that is missing values. Whichever value, for example, the customer details, if we take, if there is no customer ID, that's a customer ID, it's a basic thing that we need to have. And if some sort of customer's personal information is missing, which customer did not enter it by their own, then obviously the data is missing there. We cannot show some null values information in a report. All right. So we have to work on these three important techniques as soon as we get the data or the traditional data or raw data that I can talk about. So now let us understand what are the different approaches of working with this traditional data. The first thing that I am talking about is balancing. Now you might have a question, what is meant by balancing? Let me give you a small example of elections. We all are done with elections, right? So let me give you a small example of elections. We all know before every election, every political party, what they do, they give a survey. They take a survey from the public, right? So now let us understand the probability of this particular survey. Okay. So in this particular survey, if for example, in this particular survey, I will go to the public, I will take the samples of 70 females and 30 males, and I will tell that okay, so 70% people are expecting that this party can form the government, and the 30% of people expecting this party can form the government. Do you think that that is correct? No, it is unbalanced. It is unbalanced. You are expecting from 70% people, you have taken more samples from the 70% people, it doesn't mean that what they told is correct, right? So we need to balance it. You take the samples of 50% of this people and 50% this people, then you expect the result. Okay, that you need to balance it. Okay, that is very much important in balancing part that I talk about. The same thing happens with the data as well. We need to balance the data. What exactly the data we have, is it suitable or not? How can we relate it? How can we create the relation between this table to this table in order to get the information? That kind of balancing is required. Okay, and if I want to explain it to you in a very easy way of how exactly we can balance and understand the data that we have received, then I can go with the ER diagram. Okay, entity relationship diagram. I can go with the ER diagram, and I can go with the relational schema as well, where I can correlate that okay, each table is connected to this many tables and this is the information that I have. So even this can also give you a probable idea or probable solution in order to work with the traditional data. So if I even give you a small example, let me give you a small example. So here I am executing a customer cart table, the numerical and categorical data that I have spoken about. So we can see this particular cart ID. Cart ID is something which cannot be manipulated. We cannot do any sort of changes with this cart ID or customer ID, whatever we might take it. So that is something which is very much important to know who is that particular customer, what are the details of them, how many products they have purchased, quantity, date, so on. This cannot be manipulated. But if I take this this is also numerical data, right? The category, cart ID or customer ID, this is a numerical data, it has only numbers. But if I take the price is also a numerical data. Okay, that might be in decimals, but it is a numerical data, right? So now I can manipulate the price. I can see what is my total price. I can see what is my average price. I can see what is my minimum price. I can see what is my maximum price. So I can manipulate this data. So my dear viewers, always understand, when we are getting the data, we need to be very much sure about what exactly is this data telling us all about. Okay, that is called as labeling. Okay, so I cannot go and touch this categorical data. What should I do with this categorical data? Customer first name, if I talk to you about the customer details, personal details, customer names are so and so, customer last name and so, what should I do with them? I cannot manipulate them, right? So but the numerical data can be manipulated, but in that numerical data also, which particular data to be manipulated or that it's required depending upon the requirements that you get. So these are the different ways of handling with the traditional data, and these are the few techniques that you can work with the traditional data in order to understand something about that particular data and business, and you start doing the process of execution so that you can get a proper desired output or information as per the client's requirement and customer's requirement from your organization. So thank you for choosing KnowHow Academy as your source for IT knowledge. We are always here to help you to navigate the tech world. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. It's been a pleasure sharing this information with you. Stay curious and keep learning.